Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Watch my video and subscribe my channel. Luna Nozawa's shocking revelation to Will Spencer that she is pregnant after their wild and reckless night together at Il Giardino sent seismic waves through Los Angeles that not even the most jaded Forrester, Spencer, or Logan could have predicted. Because this was not merely about a one-night encounter between two impulsive souls. It was a domino that threatened to topple fragile alliances, reignite ancient feuds, and expose carefully buried secrets that stretched back months, involving Luna's turbulent mental health, her tangled history with forbidden substances, Will's desperate need to prove himself as more than just dollar bill Spencer's pampered heir, and the reckless choices made on that fateful night when alcohol, forbidden 180 proof liquor, and lingering obsession brewed into a storm that neither Deacon Sharp, who owned the restaurant and tried to keep things under control, nor Electra, who had been Will's date that evening, could contain. Luna, trembling yet defiant, told Will in the back alley behind Il Giardino that she had missed her cycle and taken a test, and when the second pink line appeared, her world tilted. Because the paternity test would not only raise questions about Will's future, but also rip open old wounds with Poppy Nozawa, her mother, who had begged her to stay away from the Spencer scion, fearing history repeating itself with the kind of scandal that once rocked her own life. And now, as Luna stood under the dim neon glow of the restaurant sign, Will's face went pale, his youthful bravado dissolving into sheer panic, because, unlike his father, he was not yet seasoned in the art of damage control manipulation, or the quiet payoffs that had kept the Spencer empire intact for decades. Instead, he stammered about responsibility, about what Electra would think if this truth surfaced, about how Hope Logan, who had become an almost sisterly mentor to him lately, guiding him through the post-college chaos of LA high society, would judge his actions, and about what Bill would do, knowing full well that his father had already been under fire for enabling Liam Spencer's recent scandals involving Luna herself, the very same woman who now claimed to be carrying his youngest son's child. And the news did not stay in that alleyway for long, because Luna's conscience, twisted by the guilt of the night and the faint echo of Sheila Carter's manipulations, since Sheila, in a moment of misplaced maternal instinct, had earlier tipped Luna off about Will's private gathering at Il Giardino, pushed her to confide in Deacon, who, despite having sworn to keep his establishment clear of drama after the last Luna debacle, found himself once again playing reluctant mediator between the wayward Nozawa girl and the volatile Spencer clan. And as whispers turned into heated confrontations, Steffi Forrester heard the news from Finn, who heard it from Lee because, of course, Lee had her own spies at the hospital and knew Luna had scheduled a secret prenatal consultation. And Steffi, already on edge from the Luna, Electra scandal that had endangered her family's reputation months earlier, marched into Forrester Creations demanding Ridge and Carter Walton tighten the reins on any Spencer collaborations, while Brooke Logan, torn between supporting her daughter Hope and not alienating Bill, found herself once again walking the razor's edge of loyalty, her history with the Spencer men flashing before her as she listened to Hope argue that Luna might actually deserve compassion rather than condemnation, especially if the pregnancy was real and not just another desperate ploy. Meanwhile, Poppy confronted her daughter in a scene so raw and bitter that it echoed Lee's harshest interventions with Finn during his darker days, demanding to know whether this was another scheme, whether the so-called pregnancy was a bargaining chip to wedge herself deeper into Spencer wealth. And Luna, in tears, swore it wasn't, that this time she had truly been swept up in the moment, in the way Will had looked at her that night, a night that had already been marred by too much drink and too little judgment, a night where Electra's jealous stares and Will's bravado created a powder keg she was foolish enough to ignite. The fallout reached even further when Bill Spencer, learning of the scandal from a tabloid leak before his own son could confess, stormed into Il Giardino and threatened to buy the place just to shut it down, blaming Deacon for letting his son drink that much, for letting Luna anywhere near him after the chaos she had caused Liam, for allowing a repeat of history that now threatened to entangle his legacy with yet another unpredictable Nozoa. Yet amidst all the fury, there was also a whisper of doubt, because some began to wonder whether this pregnancy might not even be Will's, whether Luna, still haunted by the shadows of her past obsessions and manipulations, might have ulterior motives, or worse, whether someone, perhaps her rumored evil twin Rana, whose name had surfaced in hushed conversations among Lee's more suspicious contacts, had engineered a plot to trap a Spencer heir for reasons not yet understood. And this speculation gained traction when Finn, torn between his medical oath and his marriage to Steffi, quietly offered to oversee a DNA test, suspecting that just as Grace Buckingham had once faked Liam's brain tumor and scammed Bill for $1 million surgery, there might be another medical deception in play. But the emotional gravity of the situation could not be denied, because Will, despite his youth, began showing a side of himself rarely seen. Haunted yet protective, confused yet oddly drawn to Luna in her vulnerability, visiting her late at night in the small apartment she shared with Poppy to ask about the baby's health, to wonder aloud if he might actually want to step up where his brother Liam had failed so many times before, and this only deepened Electra's rage. Because she had thought that night at Il Giardino was the start of something real between her and Will. Not the night she lost him to the very woman she had warned him about. And so Electra, in a fit of vengeful calculation, aligned herself with Sheila Carter, believing that exposing Luna's every lie, true or false, would drive Will back to her arms. Meanwhile, Sheila, in one of her rare moments of twisted redemption, found herself strangely protective of Luna, seeing in her the lost, flailing girl she once was, and tried to keep Electra from going too far. Even as Deacon pleaded with her not to interfere, the Forresters' side watched in horror as yet another Spencer scandal threatened their brand. Hope found herself torn between loyalty to her father's longtime rival and her lingering soft spot for Liam, who, from his own quiet corner of recovery and scandal fatigue, warned Will that getting entangled with Luna was a dangerous, life-altering mistake, and Ridge wondered aloud if this was all some grand cosmic punishment for aligning too closely with Spencer Power in recent months. As weeks stretched into months, the pregnancy became undeniable. Luna began to show, and the whispers about paternity solidified into a demand for answers, not only from Bill, but also from Katie, who feared for young Will's future, from Steffi, who feared for her company's reputation, from Poppy, who feared losing her daughter entirely, and from Will himself, who, but the dark hand behind it, pulling strings with a patience only the most dangerous villains possess in Los Angeles. But the story didn't stop at that tense revelation behind Il Giardino. It spiraled, metastasizing like a whispered rumor that became a wildfire engulfing Los Angeles' elite, because as soon as Luna's pregnancy hit the Spencer inner circle, it became more than a personal crisis. It became a corporate liability, a media magnet, and a trigger for all the old grudges between the Spencers, Forresters, and Logans to resurface with renewed venom. And at the center of it all was a terrified, yet strangely resolute Will, who alternated between pacing the Spencer Tower boardroom like his father in his prime and sitting slumped in the dark corners of his penthouse, scrolling through social media posts speculating about whether Luna was after his inheritance, while Luna herself, now carrying life inside her, oscillated between fear, defiance, and the gnawing suspicion that she was being watched, because ever since the night she told Will the truth, strange things had started happening. Her prenatal appointment reminders disappeared from her phone. Anonymous messages warned her to leave Los Angeles. And on more than one occasion, she swore she saw a shadowy figure. Was it Rana, the rumored evil twin Lee had once whispered about in a late-night confession to Finn? Or was this another trick of Sheila Carter's ever-calculating mind? And as Luna's paranoia grew, so did the tensions between the matriarchs. Poppy, desperate to control the narrative and shield her daughter from public ruin, clashed violently with Lee, who insisted that Luna was a ticking time bomb of Nozoa chaos threatening the Finnegan name, and their arguments spilled into hospital corridors, catching Finn in the crossfire as Steffi demanded he cut ties with his half-sister entirely. Meanwhile, Bill Spencer, torn between wanting to handle the scandal with cold, transactional efficiency as he had so many times before, and the raw paternal instinct to protect his youngest son from public crucifixion, secretly summoned Justin Barber to draft contingencies, hush money agreements, potential custody leverage, and a plan to quietly relocate Luna if the pregnancy proved real. And in this swirling vortex, Hope Logan found herself in an unlikely role, reluctant ally to Luna, drawn not only by compassion but by the bitter lesson of her own life entangling with Spencer men, warning Luna, late one night at the cabin, that being pregnant by a Spencer isn't just about diapers and lullabies. It's about survival in a world that will weaponize your womb before your baby takes its first breath. And that sentence stuck with Luna, even as she wrestled with morning sickness and mounting threats. Electra, meanwhile, shifted from scorn to vengeful, hiring a private investigator to dig into Luna's past, hoping to find dirt that would not only destroy her rival, but also endear her to Bill as the responsible future daughter-in-law. Yet what she uncovered shook even her. Hospital records suggesting that Luna may have had previous complications tied to an undisclosed incident in San Francisco, possibly linked to a shadow pregnancy covered up by Lee years ago. And suddenly the question wasn't just, is the baby Will's? But will this baby even survive the pressure cooker it's being born into? Deacon Sharp, the unwitting host of the night that started it all, became a reluctant confessor for both sides, listening to a wrestle with his guilt over betraying Electra and his fear of becoming the new Liam, a man defined by women's heartbreak, and hearing Luna sob about the weight of carrying a child who might grow up hated before birth, and Deacon, haunted by his own sins and desperate to finally do something right, began quietly documenting the events, perhaps to shield himself later, or perhaps because, deep down, he feared this story would not end with a christening but with a headline. As weeks bled into months, the pregnancy progressed and the walls closed in. Paparazzi caught Luna leaving an obstetrician's office. The tabloid screamed, "Spencer heir scandal. Will or won't he?" And Ridge Forrester, watching the circus, warned Brooke that this was the kind of mess that had derailed their family, before urging her to distance Hope from the drama, while Katie, with a mother's fierce instinct, demanded Bill stop playing fixer and start being a father. Yet Bill, in rare vulnerability, confessed to her one night that he wasn't sure he could handle another Spencer son repeating Liam's cycle of scandal, guilt, and broken women, and that admission cracked the ice between them in ways neither expected. And then came the twist that no one saw coming. Lee Finnegan, still bitter and suspicious, ordered a discreet second opinion on Luna's test results and found something that made her blood run cold. The hormone levels didn't align with Will's supposed timeline, opening the door to two shocking possibilities. Either Luna had been with someone else, or someone had tampered with the tests. And when Finn confronted Luna gently about this, she broke down, revealing that in the chaotic weeks before Will's party, she had been stalked by a mysterious figure she suspected was Rana, who may have drugged her drink one night at a club. And now Luna wasn't just carrying a baby. She was carrying a question mark that could ignite a paternity war unlike anything Los Angeles had ever seen. The battle lines hardened. Steffi demanded full Spencer, Forrester disengagement until the truth came out. Hope warned against demonizing a pregnant woman. Poppy threatened to sue anyone who smeared her daughter's name, and Bill, for the first time in years, found himself cornered, not by rivals but by the very machinery of his own empire. As Justin, Wyatt, and even Liam offered conflicting advice, some coldly legal, others quietly human. Meanwhile, Sheila, circling the edges of the storm like a vulture with an oddly tender streak, reached out to Luna, offering her protection in exchange for trust, planting the seeds of a bond that terrified Steffi to her core. For she saw in Luna the same vulnerability Sheila had exploited in Finn, and feared history repeating with a younger, less guarded Spencer. And as the story reached its fever pitch, with DNA test day looming, Luna made the boldest choice of all. She invited Will, Electra, Poppy, Bill, and even Hope to the hospital, declaring she wanted the truth revealed in public, no more whispers, no more cover-ups, just answers. But as the nurse drew the blood and the lab processed the results, a fire alarm triggered, the system glitched, and the samples disappeared, sparking a new wave of accusations. Did Rana sabotage it to keep her shadowy game in play? Did Bill's fixer pull the strings to delay a scandal he couldn't yet contain? Or did Luna herself, terrified of losing control, pull one final desperate stunt to keep the question alive a little longer? Because in Los Angeles, sometimes the question is more powerful than the answer, and in that limbo, entire empires rise and fall. What no one realized as the hospital alarms echoed and the DNA samples vanished was that this wasn't merely another bureaucratic mishap. It was the first open shot in a silent war being waged over control. Control of the baby, control of the narrative, control of Will Spencer's future, and perhaps, if whispers about Rana were true, control of Luna's very identity, because that night, security cameras caught a fleeting silhouette on the stairwell. A woman in a dark hood with Luna's same height, same hair, same gait, disappearing moments after the samples went missing. And when Finn reviewed the footage, his pulse quickened. Was this the proof Lee had been warning him about? The evidence that the supposed twin Rana, thought to have been adopted out or lost years ago, had returned to manipulate events with surgical precision. And as Finn dug deeper, risking his fragile peace with Steffi, who had begged him to stay out of Nozoa madness, he discovered a sealed record in a Japanese clinic, dated long before Luna's Los Angeles scandals began, suggesting that another Nozoa girl had been treated for severe psychological breaks and delusions of pregnancy, a record Lee had once tried to destroy to protect the family name. Meanwhile, Luna, unaware of the exact nature of the sabotage, but sensing she was no longer in control of her own life, clung to Will with an almost desperate intensity, whispering to him late one night on the balcony of Spencer Publications that someone doesn't want this baby to be born. And for the first time, Will felt the chill his father had so often described when dealing with hidden enemies. Because this wasn't about paparazzi anymore, this was about shadow players moving pieces like a chess match. Bill, catching wind of the vanishing samples and the reemergence of Rana rumors, hardened overnight. No more waiting, no more hesitation. He ordered Justin to launch a private investigation that skirted legality, tracing bank transfers, clinic logs, and even Deacon's staff lists from the night at Il Giardino, because he had begun to suspect that Luna's pregnancy, whether genuine or staged, was part of a larger con designed either to fleece his fortune or to destabilize the Spencer name while it was still recovering from Liam's brain tumor scandal. But Katie, watching this transformation, saw something else. Beneath the coldness was a father desperate not to fail his youngest son the way he felt he had failed Liam, and this vulnerability rekindled an ember between them, leading to late-night strategy meetings that turned into whispered confessions about what went wrong with our family and how do we fix it before Will ends up like Liam. Electra, seeing her position, slipping further as Will spent more and more time with Luna despite the scandal, played her trump card. She reached out to Ridge Forrester with proof that Spencer's shares were vulnerable in the wake of the pregnancy story, proposing a quiet Forrester takeover of a key distribution deal if she could help neutralize Luna, an alliance so toxic it made Brooke blanch when she overheard, because she knew exactly how these vendettas destroyed lives, and she begged Ridge not to weaponize the unborn child for corporate gain. But Ridge, burned too many times by Spencer arrogance, only saw an opportunity. Hope, standing on the other side, drew closer to Will as a confidant, urging him to make his own decisions and not be swallowed by family wars, and this created its own dangerous ripple as whispers began. Was Hope trying to control Will the way she had once been accused of controlling Liam, and the tabloids ran with it, splashing headlines that painted the Logans as puppet masters of the next Spencer heir. In the midst of this, Sheila Carter made her boldest move yet. She visited Luna privately, bringing an old photograph of a young girl who looked eerily like Luna, claiming it was Rana, and warning her that the twin you don't remember may be the one writing this story. And in that moment, Luna felt the ground shift, memories she had suppressed, nights of waking up in strange places, whispers of a sister her mother refused to talk about, all came rushing back, and she realized that the pregnancy may not just be a scandal, it may be bait in a far larger trap. The city became a maze of surveillance, whispers, and legal maneuvers. Bridget Forrester was pulled in to oversee a new round of medical testing under tight security. Lee demanded an injunction to keep Luna under hospital observation. Poppy fought back with a high-powered attorney claiming harassment, and through it all Will began to crack, not from fear of fatherhood, but from the crushing realization that no one around him wanted him to simply be a man who made a mistake and wanted to make it right. They wanted him to be a pawn, a brand, a shield, and in the dead of night he confessed to Luna that he wished they could just disappear, start over somewhere far from Los Angeles, far from Spencer money, far from Forrester manipulation. But disappearing was not in the cards, because the storm had already drawn too many players. Wyatt Spencer returned from his travels to fix the mess Dad can't see straight. Through, Carter Walton found himself caught between legal duty to Forrester Creations and emotional loyalty to Hope, who pleaded with him not to sign off on any legal action against Luna until the truth was known, and even Ivy Forrester, fresh from her own complicated entanglements, whispered to Liam that this family has a curse. You either become the scandal or you get swallowed by it. And then came the night that would change everything. A mysterious car accident on Mulholland involving a dark sedan registered to a shell company tied to Rana's last known address. A near miss that sent Luna into premature labor scare and forced Will to finally call an emergency family summit, dragging Bill, Katie, Poppy, Electra, Hope, Ridge, and even Steffi into one room, declaring that this ends now, no more whispers, no more lawyers, no more DNA games. We either stand for this child or we destroy each other before it's even born. And in that charged silence with cameras outside, enemies circling, and a hospital monitor beeping in the background, the war paused just long enough for the city to take a breath, because what came next would decide not only the fate of Luna and her unborn child, but the very alignment of power across Los Angeles's most infamous dynasties.